What is up, my friends? Today, I got a new style of video for you. It's basically going to be a video essay, although I don't want to call it that because that sounds boring as shit, but I'm going to be doing a deep dive into the 2024 Tampa Bay Buccaneers and kind of talking about some of the problems that I see with them that I don't think are getting discussed enough. So first, I'm going to start out by kind of talking about some of the surface level issues that, your grandma could see. And then I'm going to kind of get a little bit deeper with it and talk about something that I really haven't seen talked about at all, but raises some serious concerns for me when it comes to the 2024 Buccaneers. I discovered it during my 7 players that I'm scared to draft video, so if you watch that one, then you know what I'm talking about. But without further ado, let's get into it. All right, like I said, starting out surface level here. These ones are not enough to sway me away from the Buccaneers after the season that they had last year, although I still think it's worth mentioning because they are real things. Okay, now first we are going to talk about Sir Mike Evans, Mr. Consistent, reliable. That's right. So in 2023, Mike Evans had 13 touchdowns. And in 2022, he had 6 touchdowns. So, I think that that's likely to balance out a little bit. We'll probably see Mike Evans with somewhere around like 8 or 9 touchdowns. And then the big obvious, okay? Mike Evans is 31 years old now. He's getting up there in football player eaters for sure. In wide receivers, we tend to see a general decline in performance after 30. So I think that that's worth mentioning, but obviously there have been plenty of players who have had great seasons, even after that 30-year-old death sentence. Mike Evans is an elite talent, so I don't think that we can expect to see some crazy drop-off from him this season. I just think that the age is something worth mentioning when you're making a video exposing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, moving on to something a little more legitimate, let's talk about Rachaad White. Now, Rachaad White had a very, very good season last year, although he was really, really not efficient. He was at 3.6 yards per carry, which is pretty gross, to be honest. That is not a good number by any means. But the dude got crazy volume last year. I mean, he was tied for the second most attempts with Christian McCaffrey at 272 attempts. That's a fucking lot of attempts, and we all know how the 49ers use Christian McCaffrey, what that looks like. Now, CMC, with the same amount of attempts, finished with 469 more yards than Rachaad White. That is pretty ridiculous. Like, I get it. I know CMC is super elite, best running back in the league, whatever. That is still not a good look for Rachaad White either way. I think that really exposes just how inefficient he was last year. And to put it into even more perspective here, Najee Harris, textbook big bruiser hated running back in the league. Najee had 17 less rushing attempts than Rachaad White. And guess what? He had 45 more yards. Like, people love to shit on Najee for being inefficient as hell. And look at Rachaad White. Like, that is a little bit concerning. Like, that is really, really inefficient. And Dave Canales was able to mask that because he's some sort of offensive mastermind guru or something. I don't know what he is, but now Rachaad White he's definitely a good player, but it's really hard to quantify how much of this success is from Dave Canales' presence and how much is really Rachaad White being a good player, And on top of all that, the Bucs O-line really isn't anything to write home about. I mean, Tristan Wirfs is good. Cody Mock is really, I may have mispronounced that, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Fucking toothless wonder Cody Mock. He's still got a long ways to go. He did not look very good last year, and as a whole, it definitely sunk the value of that O-line. Now, I do think it's worth mentioning with Rachaad White, he had 549 receiving yards last year at 8.6 yards per reception. That's pretty good. He's definitely a receiving threat in a sense. He's not quite CMC level, Austin Eckler type, Alvin Kamara, but he definitely does have a receiving upside, which is good. You love to see that. Now, let's move on from Rachaad White's inefficient ass. Let's talk about Baker Mayfield, that quirked up, swaggy white boy. Yes, sir. We all know Baker's got that dog in him. That's no question. But he's also got that goof in him. That's no question. Now, we all remember Baker's career with the Browns. It was a bit up and down, but he ended up finishing 92 touchdowns to 56 interceptions and 236 yards per game with the Browns over 4 seasons. Now, Baker had some really fun moments with the Browns. He had some really not great moments with the Browns. I mean, 2019, 22 TDs to 21 interceptions. That is really not pretty. That is averaging well over an interception a game. So Baker was definitely a bit of a roller coaster ride with Cleveland. And then in 2022, he goes to old dysfunctional Carolina, suiting up with Sammy Darnold and PJ Walker. Now, I think we all remember this stint. It was really, really not pretty for Baker. He threw for 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions and 188 yards per game in 6 games started. Not good. I mean, the reality of the situation is he got his job taken by PJ Walker. He got outplayed by PJ Walker, and they wanted nothing to do with him in Carolina after that. So they said, fuck you, Baker, kicked him to the curb and sent him to LA. And now, we all remember that fairy tale game-winning drive that Baker had when he fucking flew into LA on Thursday and won them that game on Sunday night or some shit like that.
More light. Deep down the sideline, Mayfield to the end zone.
Threw that beautiful ball to take him down the field with very little time remaining in the 4th quarter. That was awesome. However, that is where my praises end when it comes to Baker Mayfield and the 2022 Rams. Because in 4 games started, basically 5 when you count the game where he came in to lead the game-winning drive, Baker threw 4 touchdowns to 2 interceptions and 170 yards per game. Really not a good look, Baker. Now, the 2022 Rams are going to be very significant in this story, so I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. But anyways, 2023, Baker goes to the Bucs and has a career year. Puts up 28 touchdowns to 10 interceptions and 238 yards per game. A great season from Baker. You love to see it. I was stoked. I was rooting for the Bucs the whole time. I wanted them to make some noise in the playoffs, but we all knew that wasn't realistic. I mean, let's be real. At the beginning of the before the 2023 season had started, everybody was shitting on the Bucs. A lot of people had them as their fucking worst team in the league, finishing with like 4 or 5 wins. Now, I think when I did my predictions, I wasn't too far off that, to be quite frank. I had faith in Baker, although I didn't quite think it would amount to that level of success. So, shout out to the 2023 Bucs. They were a super fun team to watch. Okay, now we're going to dive into some of the more juicy stuff here. So, buckle your seatbelt, ladies and gentlemen, because let's talk about the Dave Canales departure. Seemingly an offensive guru and mastermind. I mean, look what he did for Baker, and let's talk about the 2022 Seahawks, why don't we? So Dave Canales was the passing game coordinator and QB coach for the Seattle Seahawks when Geno came in and had his revival season. Geno had essentially been banished to the backup quarterback jail, and there was looking like there was no escaping for poor old Geno. Everybody wrote Geno off, but he ain't right back though. So, in 2022, Geno Smith threw for 30 touchdowns to 11 interceptions and 252 yards per game. And then, in 2023, he regressed to 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and 242 yards per game. And frankly, I don't really think that stats do that regression justice either, because if you watch Geno from 2022 to 2023, it felt like the regression was more significant than that, in my opinion. Now, let's compare Geno's season in 2022 to Baker's. 30 TDs, 11 interceptions, 252 yards per game, whereas Baker was 28 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, 238 yards per game. Those are very, very similar stat lines. Dave Canales is just sitting in his lab crafting these quarterbacks to throw for almost 30 touchdowns, 10 picks, and around 250 yards, nothing more, nothing less. Now, back to Geno Smith's regression in 2023. So, a lot of people like to make the Seahawks O-line was horrible in 2023. That's not fair to Geno, and I'm not going to lie, I've been guilty of that before. However, if you look up 2022 offensive line rankings, PFF had the Seahawks O-line ranked dead last going into the 2022 season. Geno's revival season, that O-line was ranked dead last going into the year. And guess what? I know, PFF is not the gospel. However, that still is really not good. Like, They did not have a good O-line in 2022. They didn't have one in 2023 either, but you can't really blame that regression in 2023 on a bad O-line when the O-line's just been shitty all around for the past couple of years. Now, Shane Waldron was the offensive coordinator in Seattle from 2021 through 2023. So he was with Geno calling the plays in both 2022 and 2023. So frankly, it's hard not to blame the regression on Canales' departure when he was there in 2022 and he was gone for the shitty season in 2023. In 2022, the Seattle Seahawks were ranked 12th in total offensive yards, and then in 2023, they fell down to 21st in total offensive yards. 2022, they were 9th in points per game, and in 2023, they were 17th. So just an overall offensive fall off with the departure of Dave Canales. At this point, it's really hard for me not to attribute the offensive success of the 2023 Buccaneers and the 2022 Seahawks to Dave Canales. I mean, just look at the difference when he's gone from the Seahawks. And for fuck's sakes, the dude made a running back who was averaging 3.6 yards per carry finish as the RB7 in half-point PPR fantasy scoring. Like, that is not an easy task. You got to be somewhat of an offensive mastermind to be pulling that type of witchcraft. Now, enough about Dave Canales. I think that I've proven my point that he is a big reason that the 2023 Bucs and 2022 Seahawks had success in their offense when really there were no expectations for either of those teams prior to the season. He's able to take a below average offense and make it above average. These offenses haven't been elite. However, with the talent that he's been handed, he has been producing some damn good offenses, and it's really impressive. So let's move on. Okay, let's go. Now we get to talk about the whole reason I made this video. This is what inspired me here. Liam Coen. Does that ring any bells to anybody? Well, Liam Coen is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator for the 2024 season. But he has been around the league a little bit prior to this, so let's talk about his background before we really dive into things here. So Liam Coen was the assistant wide receiver coach of the LA Rams from 2018 to 2019, and then in 2020 he was reassigned to the assistant quarterbacks coach of the Rams. After 2020, he went to the University of Kentucky, where he was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach responsible for a lot of Will Levis's success in college, specifically during that 2021 season. Now, to be frank, this is where my good praises for Liam Coen end. Plenty of coaches have success at the college level and completely fail in the NFL, like Urban Meyer, Matt Rule. I don't need to go on, there are plenty more examples. But before I continue to shit on him, let me elaborate on why I am shitting on him. Let's go back to those 2022 Rams. Remember, I told you to keep them in the back of your mind. So, in 2021, the Rams were amazing, right? I mean, they won the Super Bowl. It was awesome. And then in 2022, they proceeded to follow that up by posting the worst regular season record by reigning Super Bowl champs ever, going 5-12 in 2022. Now, you're probably saying,
Scrab, why are you talking about the 2022 Rams right now?
Because guess who the offensive coordinator of that team was? That's right, Liam Coen. Liam Coen was the one leading the offense on the 5-12 2022 Rams. So let's look a little bit more into that team, shall we? They were last in total offensive yards, 27th in offensive points per game, 28th in rushing yards per game, and 27th in passing yards per game. That is awful. Those are some incredibly underwhelming offensive stats. Like, that is just a bad offense. And mind you, they did all that with a number 11 ranked O-line. Like, you can't even blame it on shitty O-line play. It was just poor offensive game planning and strategy. And, you know, I think it's important to say that McVay was still the primary play caller, but ultimately Liam Coen was the one responsible for the offensive game plan as a whole and how this offense functioned. And he did a horrible job doing that. Oh, but wait. Liam Coen actually did call one game during the 2022 season. Week 12 versus the Chiefs. Let's take a look at that game. Well, that's not good. Okay. Now, in his defense, he had Bryce Perkins and Riley Dixon as quarterback, but oof, yeah, that is a rough showing for Liam Coen. Small sample size, but you don't like to see that. No, but jokes aside, it is worth mentioning that the 2022 Rams had some really serious injury problems. So, I mean, Liam Coen was dealing with an injured Stafford who missed most of the season, and the other quarterbacks he was given were John Wolford, Bryce Perkins, whoever the hell Riley Dixon is, threw one pass in this Week 12 game versus the Chiefs, and Baker Mayfield? That's right. That's why I told you to keep the 2022 Rams in the back of your mind, because Baker Mayfield has already played for Liam Coen in his career. His brand new offensive coordinator for the Bucs, he's already played for him. And guess what? It was not pretty. Like I said, in 2022, with the Rams, Baker started 4 games, really 5 when you count the game-winning drive one. And he threw 4 touchdowns to 2 interceptions and 170 yards per game. A putrid performance from Baker under Liam Coen. And now I'm really hoping that last year allowed Baker to mature and grow, but oh my God, that 2022 stint with the Rams with Liam Coen, that does not instill confidence in me for Baker next year whatsoever. And look, there was a poor wide receiver core there. Kupp was injured. He was relying on Van Jefferson and Tutu Atwell for the most part, for fuck's sake. But, I mean, still, like I said, they had a decent O-line. They had Cam Akers and Kyron Williams, both who we know are pretty decent running backs at this point, especially Kyron. Like, I understand that there are reasons that the Rams just should have been bad in 2022. A lot of the cards were stacked against them. However, they should not have been this bad, and I think that Liam Coen really helped this team be that bad. I mean, we saw it in 2023. The Rams had a hell of a bounce-back year. They didn't even sort of look like the team that they were in 2022. They were scary on offense, a team that defenses were not looking forward to playing. So it's hard for me to not blame a lot of the shit of the 2022 Rams on Liam Coen. All right, now to wrap everything up, needless to say, I'm concerned with the departure of Dave Canales and the addition of Liam Coen. I am not confident in the Bucs. Do I think they could be decent? Yeah, sure. Do I think they're recreating last season? No. Do I think they could have an awful season and fall to like 5-12, just like the old 2022 Rams? Yeah, I absolutely think that's a possibility. Dave Canales has shown his offensive prowess at this point. Like, we know that he is good at making below average offenses good offenses, and Liam Coen has done the opposite of that. All that he's done is provided Will Levis a good college season. It's like, congrats, you allowed an incredibly athletic guy who can throw an amazing deep ball to look good in college. Really difficult. That's a really hard thing to do, because like I said, college is totally different. There are plenty of coaches who had success in college and could not recreate that success in the NFL. So yeah, with Baker's up and down career and Rachaad White's inefficiency issues and Liam Coen to try and help lead them through that, I am very, very worried about the 2023 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think I am probably going to stay away from them for the most part. I don't think I'm interested in this offense after I realized who Liam Coen was and what this offense might look like this year. Now, y'all are still allowed to believe in the Bucs. I understand if you do, but I just think that this is something that I have heard literally nobody talk about, and I feel like it's a very, very legitimate concern. Your offensive mastermind leaves, and you bring in a offensive coordinator who really has very few good things to show on his resume. I mean, what is there to be impressed about Liam Coen? But yeah, hopefully we're living in a timeline where the talent of Baker and Mike Evans and Rachaad White just shine through, and they fight through adversity of having no Dave Canales at the helm, and they're able to put out a pretty decent season. Although, like I said, I think it's more likely that they have an absolute stinker of a season. So with that, I think that'll about wrap it up. I just wanted to shine some light on this situation that I do not think is getting enough attention, and I think it's definitely something to be at least a little bit worried about. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed, leave me a like, leave me a comment, hit that sub button. You know what it is. Appreciate you guys. Scrub out.